In late May 1940, Allied troops, French, Polish, and Norwegian, stormed Narvik, a remote Arctic port under German control. After weeks of brutal street fighting, the Allies finally drove the Germans out, raising their flags in a rare early victory against Hitler. But celebration was short-lived. News arrived. France was collapsing under the German blitzkrieg, and British forces were trapped at Dunkirk. The strategic situation had changed overnight. Narvik's triumph was suddenly irrelevant. Orders came to evacuate. The soldiers who had fought so hard now had to abandon their prize. Between June 4th and 8th, Allied troops quietly boarded ships, leaving Narvik to the Germans without another shot fired. The victory became a bitter memory, overshadowed by disaster elsewhere. For the men who fought there, Narvik meant everything. For Allied leaders, it was just a sideshow. The fall of France made holding Narvik impossible. Resources were needed elsewhere. The story of Narvik became a lesson. Even the bravest local victories can be swept away by the tides of global war. In the end, the port was lost, and the cost of its fleeting liberation faded into the larger tragedy unfolding across Europe. The men sailed away, leaving behind a town that would again fall into enemy hands. Narvik's brief liberation was a stark reminder of how quickly fortunes can change in war. Why did Narvik matter? Its ice-free harbor was the end of a railway from Sweden's iron ore mines, vital for German steel production. In winter, the Baltic froze, making Narvik the only year-round export route for this precious ore. Both sides knew whoever controlled Narvik could choke or sustain the German war machine. Churchill and the Allies plotted to cut the supply line. Hitler, fearing this, ordered a preemptive invasion. The race for Narvik was about more than territory. It was about controlling the industrial heart of the Third Reich. Thousands would fight and die for the flow of Swedish ore through this Arctic port. Narvik was a gateway, not just a town, a lever that could tip the balance of the entire war. Control of Narvik meant power over the resources fueling the conflict. On April 9, 1940, German destroyers landed elite mountain troops at Narvik, quickly overwhelming the defenders. The Germans seized the port, but their victory was precarious. They were isolated, far from home, and vulnerable at sea. The British Royal Navy struck back, destroying all 10 German destroyers and trapping the invaders. Now, 2,000 German troops under General Dietl were stranded, their supplies lost with their ships. Facing encirclement and Arctic hardship, Dietl's men salvaged what they could and braced for siege. The Germans became a besieged garrison, forced to improvise for survival. With the Royal Navy controlling the fjord, resupply was nearly impossible. Dietl's force dug in, using the mountains for defense, preparing for a long, desperate fight. The battle for Narvik had become a test of endurance and ingenuity. What began as a swift invasion turned into a grueling struggle for survival. Dietl's Gebirgsjäger were mountain warfare specialists, expert skiers, climbers, and survivalists. While Allied troops struggled in the snow, the Germans thrived, using the terrain to their advantage. Dietl's leadership kept morale high. His men moved swiftly, launching surprise attacks and vanishing into the mountains. A secret supply route through neutral Sweden kept them barely alive, with supplies smuggled over hidden trails. The Allies, ill-equipped for Arctic combat, floundered in deep snow and freezing cold. The Germans' mastery of the environment allowed them to hold out against superior numbers. Their resilience and tactics turned the mountains into a fortress. In Narvik, expertise and adaptation proved as vital as firepower. As Dietl's men held on, Berlin launched Operation Juno, a daring naval mission to relieve Narvik. German battleships Scharnhorst and Gneisenau sailed north, risking all to disrupt Allied operations. Meanwhile, Luftwaffe planes braved Arctic skies to drop supplies to the besieged troops. On June 8th, the German fleet encountered the British carrier HMS Glorious and its escorts. In a fierce battle, the Germans sank the carrier and 2 destroyers, inflicting heavy losses. The victory was dramatic, but the Allies were already evacuating Narvik. The rescue arrived too late to change the outcome, but it underscored Narvik's importance. The Germans had risked everything for their isolated troops. The battle at sea mirrored the desperation on land. With the Allies gone, Dietl's troops reoccupied Narvik, and the iron ore lifeline reopened for Germany. The campaign cost thousands of lives and crippled the German navy, but the strategic goal was achieved. Narvik showed that terrain, weather, and logistics can outweigh numbers and bravery. Specialized training and adaptability, like that of the Gebirgsjäger, can turn the tide in extreme conditions. The campaign also proved that local victories mean little if the wider war is lost elsewhere. Narvik's story is still studied for its lessons in strategy, logistics, and the unpredictability of war. It's a reminder: every battle is shaped by forces far beyond the front lines. The fight for Narvik was more than a clash for a port. It was a lesson in the unforgiving realities of global conflict.